Hello, Board of Directors of Boeing. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Today we're going to be presenting to you what me and my colleagues have been looking over the status quo of the past situation of Boeing, and we're going to give some evaluations and recommendations for the time forward. So first we're going to start with a quick introduction just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So there has been two major setbacks in 2019 and 2018. There were two plane crashes of our 737 MAX airplanes. And in 1997, we acquisitioned with Faro aerospace giant McDonnell Douglas, which has led to quite a culture crash in the organization. In 2011, you decided to design the new 737 MAX, and this has had to be shut down due to the plane crashes because it wasn't functioning properly. So the question now remains, what should management at Boeing do in order to solve the managerial and cultural difficulties which we have in the company in order to save future human lives, of course, to prevent anything like this ever happening again, and also to save the company and regain the reputation. So to begin with, we're going to start with the Kurt Lewin's 5 forces model, just to take a look at some of the driving forces and restraining forces for change. So beginning to look at the driving forces. So there's been a lot of frequent change in leadership. Recently, there's been at least 3 new CEOs coming in, doing things differently. So it's been really hard for the employees to sort of stay on top of all the changes that are happening internally. There's also, of course, been the damaged reputation due to the plane crashes. Moving on, there's staff dissatisfaction because headquarters have been moved to Chicago. Management are also now, quite a lot of them don't have the technical skills within engineering. So they have managerial skills, but they don't have the technical skills so that employees can come up to them, ask for advice and that kind of stuff. And then moving on, there's also, of course, the industry rivalry. And this sort of puts the pressure on everyone, both leadership and the employees, to sort of the pressure and time pressure and to be innovative and come up with new sort of solutions and ideas. So it's a lot of pressure on them. And then finally, of course, the poor relationship between management and employees, which is a really big driving factor for change here. And then we have the restraining forces. So of course there is, first of all, the fear of role changes. There has already, like I mentioned, been a frequent and a lot of change in the culture in the organization. So there might be some fear and hesitancy in order to have more change. And then moving on, there's the disruption to business as usual, kind of the same. And then there's also, of course, if there's going to be a lot of change, then there's going to be training costs and implementation costs as well.
To get a better understanding on how Boeing works as an organization, we will now use Weisbord's 6-box model to get a bit deeper understanding of Boeing. So the purpose of Boeing is to, of course, create and design commercial airplanes. The structure within the organization is very top-down and hierarchical. We don't see a reward system in Boeing. There's no rewards for coming up with new ideas or to make management aware of problems within, but we do see there is some helpful mechanisms. For example, the whistleblower complaint procedure, but right now it doesn't work. Management is overlooking employees coming up with concerns about safety. Their relationship is difficult between management and employees, the engineers. They're not speaking the same language. Engineers are more technical. Management is lacking the experience with engineering, which makes it difficult for them to work together. There is also the silos. We have the headquarters in Chicago, and we have the manufacturing side in Seattle. The leadership is, as mentioned, top-down, little technical knowledge. There's being a lot of replacement going on, a lot of different CEOs coming in and out of the company, and we have seen some of the CEOs has a poor moral. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the culture within Boeing. We have used Shine's iceberg model to get a deeper understanding on how the culture is and what is affecting the culture. First, we have the artifacts. We see that the decision about moving headquarters to Chicago is a very clear statement between dividing up manufacturing and the management team. We also see how Stonecipher is introducing the slogan "Passion for Affordability," which makes Boeing much more focused on creating results for their stakeholders instead of actually focusing on innovative ideas for new airplanes. The espoused values is the earnings and results of Boeing is much more important than the safety. Safety is being overlooked. Not implementing new changes to the airplanes in the pilot manuals, and also avoiding costly training for pilots to avoid new certifications. Then the underlying assumption is that management is ignoring employees' concerns about safety. We see that some employees says they don't want their own families to actually fly on the Boeing airplanes because of the safety.
So based on the analysis on the current status of the company, we've come up with some methods of implementing change. We've utilized Colliers 8-step change model in order to look at the implementation or possible implementation and sort of our suggestions for change. So first of all, the model says that you have to establish a sense of urgency. In the sense of the 2 plane crashes and the current situation, we do believe there's already a sense of urgency, so there shouldn't be need for creating one. We have a strong urgency to restore Boeing's reputation, and that is the first step of the change. More, we have to form a powerful guiding coalition. So David, you've been appointed CEO, and David has a lot of technical experience from General Electric. We believe that his task is going to be that he needs to establish a management team which is respected by both the other part of management but also the engineers, because we do believe that the engineers do hold a lot of the innovation and has to be part of the change. We know that previous CEOs had a different vision for the company, but we do believe that Boeing is a great engineering company and not only a business company, so that should be part of the guiding coalition. Next up, we need to set more of a straight vision for Boeing. We hear a lot of talk from different departments and so on, but we don't really get a vision of what you do want, what's your mission, what do you want for the future. We know it's not what you're doing right now, but we definitely think of setting a clear vision, which should be more focused on safety for sure, will create value, both for Boeing, but also for other stakeholders, both for their customers and so on. So in general, we think that including the engineers in the change process should be part of the vision as well, and they should be part of the process of formulating a clear vision. So in order for a vision to have any kind of impact, it needs to be communicated properly. So that's the next part of our suggestions for implementing change. We do think that management needs to step up and stand forward for the rest of the organization as good role models. This also includes owning up to responsibility and taking some, being held accountable for your actions. You can't just point fingers at everybody else. Everybody needs to take responsibility for their actions and in the further implementation process. Next up, it's important that we empower others to act in the vision. Can't just be tunnel-sighted and sit here and come up with all these great visions and everything else and not introducing the vision to everyone else, and also getting everybody on board is really important. So we think that reintroducing innovation as a value is really important. As we discussed earlier in the forces driving change, innovation is a big part of it, and there is a lot of rivalry. So of course we need to step ahead of our game, but we also need to do it in a more meaningful and purposeful way. So we think that this should lead to more cross communication and more collaboration between departments. We have this, as we've talked about, we found that you have had these four sort of functional silos within Boeing, and we do need to think about having marketing and engineers and management. Everybody needs to work together. We need to, be better at working together. And I know it's, as I said before, that it's been sort of demonized by earlier CEOs, but Boeing should, it's a good thing that some of the employees see Boeing as a family and not just a crew of team members. We do encourage that a lot. So we also think in that sense it would make sense to reorganize or restructure Boeing in a way that the whistleblower system is maybe expanded and used in a more purposeful way. It can be used for so many more purposes, also including innovation. And in this process also maybe appointing some change agents to lead the change. More, I think it would be great to create some short-term wins in order to get everybody on board and see the effect of our change immediately. So we think that creating some reward system where employees that are part of the change process or are particularly innovative, they get some kind of incentive. This could be financial, it could also be not financial, it could be through recognition or rewards in other kinds of way, but we definitely think that for short-term wins it would be valuable to do some sort of reward system. Then also for just short-term wins, we need to start investigating what's going wrong, like what kind of the safety procedures are lacking and so forth, and then implement some change. More, we need to consolidate these improvements and produce still more change. So restructuring the security policy is one thing, but we really need to set some higher standards and maybe think about just reformulating them all together and then keep producing this change and really consolidate it within Boeing. So we suggest maybe creating some workshops or focus groups or so forth. It could also be interviews, but really make the employees not only talk to you, but make them talk to each other. And then make the pilots test the flights before and really keep up with the good safety procedures for the future. And then lastly, institutionalizing these new approaches shouldn't just be a short-term thing. We need to think more long-term oriented and really think about also, you do have had a lot of succession within leadership. If that were to happen again, make sure that knowledge has been shared, the vision has been shared with everybody, so the new management can further the implementation of change. And then also, we think that you should consider some internal leadership training to make sure this happens and really show how safety is related to creating higher value for Boeing.
All right, Boeing. So to summarize everything we've gone through so far, here's a quick evaluation of the status quo. So first, there is an urgent and high need for internal change of culture. This is very obvious based on the models and what we've evaluated so far. There's also, of course, the poor relationship between the management and employees, which really needs to be improved if there's going to be any improvements in the future. Furthermore, there needs to be a reestablishment of the reputation for the company and also to create more reliability. We lost a lot of reliability and accountability with the 2 plane crashes, so it's vital in order for us to stay on top of the competition to regain this reputation. And then, of course, to continue the implementation of Six Sigma. We think that was a really a smart thing to implement, and we think that you should continue to use this as well. And then finally, of course, to stabilize sort of the management team. And with that, we mean that because there's been such a frequent change and a lot of new CEOs coming in and changing the culture of the organization, it's really important to create more of a stable environment, both for the employees and management. So that was just a quick little evaluation, and then we're going to move on with the recommendations.
So the last and final step of this presentation will of course be our recommendations for the future. Just to summarize all the analysis we've done, our consulting team has, based on our analysis, found some different recommendations that you may or may not listen to, but this is what we found would be helpful for Boeing. So first of all, we definitely recommend using scenario planning for the future. Set up different scenarios and assess what risks might be related to different scenarios, and then act accordingly. This may help decide which road you will take in the future and assess whether really growth is more important than safety, or whether some safety procedure might not affect that much, or just really evaluating the different scenarios within Boeing. Also, as I've mentioned earlier, we do think that implementing some rewards or incentive systems would be very helpful. As mentioned, we suggest could be a financial incentive, but it could also definitely be something recognition-wise. It could be, for example, that we talked about change leaders. Could be, for example, that an incentive could also be appointed the leader, for example, of the group. There's a lot of recognition within that, or it could be like an employee of the month, or you could talk at a congress, or part of the newsletter, so forth. So there's definitely various incentives you could go, but we definitely think that for short-term wins it would be a good idea. And also implementing some leadership training. It seems like through different CEOs there's been very many perspectives on which road that Boeing should take, and we think that discussing with the leaders, current leaders, but also the people that might be the future leaders of Boeing, really capturing the core values of Boeing and making sure that everybody is on board, and maybe also in connection to this point, breaking down some of the functional silos within the company. We know that previously a lot of you management teams has been part of the other, like more the production floor, or your engineers yourself, and really that's really great. Is a really strong value for Boeing. We find that some of you actually know, you all know what you're doing, and you know what's going on between the different parts of the organization. However, it seems that that's sort of gotten lost maybe a little bit through the years. So really refining that and breaking down some of the functional silos through leadership training, but also maybe through workshops or a more expanded whistleblower system. And then lastly, we do think that automation of work and safety procedures is a necessity. It might not be part of like the broad, like more broad strategy, but definitely one of the first things you guys should look into is automation of work and safety procedures. So that's our recommendations for now. Of course, we should do continuous meetings and reevaluate, and you guys can think about it and get back to us, but that's what we found at this point.
Thank you for participating in tonight's meeting. Your time is very valuable for us. If you have any questions, please let us know and we will elaborate further. Thank you so much.